All right, here we go.
Took out all those wisdom teeth.
Took
decades off.
Went back in time.
Took decades off, man.
Not here, just here.
Okay. Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 163, recorded at River Road Studios in Eugene, Oregon. Today's show is brought to you by Hunter Creation, graphic designers and website designers, bringing your marketing ideas to life through websites or e-commerce sites to marketing materials that can help you with just about anything. Give a shout out to them or contact them at huntercreation.com. Sue Sierra Lupe.
Sierra Lupe Herbal Consulting. I specialize in chronic conditions and I can work with your prescriber. You can contact me for either online, distance, or in-town herbal consulting at Sierra Lupe Herbal Consultation at gmail.com.
Hey, you got it right this time.
I know. I feel really proud of myself.
Ace High Heat Graphics, custom and printed apparel. Great way to get the message out for your company or group or organization. Also a great way to fundraise. Contact them at sales@acehighheatgraphics.com. They can help you put together a quote for your group or organization or even your company to find out how you can advertise on a shirt. Again, sales@acehighheatgraphics.com. And Get Healthy Now with Candace.
Get Healthy Now with Candace is all about connecting with people with plants to transform lives. If you have been wanting to change your lifestyle and especially your diet toward a more natural way of being and to help improve your health, contact Candace at gethealthynowwithcandace.com.
And Occupy Medical.
Occupy Medical is a free integrated health clinic. We are a 501c3 and we are at 1717 Centennial, Springfield, Oregon. You can get a hold of us at occupy-medical.org. Healthcare is a human right.
All right. The Herbal Nerd Society. Hey, it's great to be an Herbal Nerd Society member because you not only get special articles that Candace and Sue write focused on an herb each month, but you also have access to all of the backlog of the Real Herbalism Radio podcast, which at this point I believe is 142 episodes, 142 plus hours of you two speaking and talking.
Awesome. A nightmare for some, a pleasure for others.
Insomniacs, that's where you want to go.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we won't put you to sleep.
No,
we might actually wake you up, so maybe not so much.
Right. So you, not only do you get all of that great content that's catered for you, you also get the Let's Talk series.
Yes, you do.
Which is a great opportunity for members of the Herbal Nerd Society to get information from our guests that come in. And we do a 10 to 12 minute focused conversation on just one item.
We have people on Facebook a lot that say, oh, this article looks really great. Do I have to be a member in order to read it? Yeah, you got to be a member. You got to pay $4.99 a month to read those articles.
That's less than the price of a latte.
It's very inexpensive, and yet it helps us produce these podcasts and put up the website that we have and do all the work that we do in the community as well. So please keep in mind when you're looking at those articles and they look nice and juicy and delicious, that you can take your own big healthy bite from it, but you just have to pay for it's like 3 months at a time. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, 3 months at a time or a year.
Right. It's $4.99 a month and it's billed, was it quarterly?
Quarterly.
And then, or once a year for $49.99 a month or $49.99 for the year. And that gives you basically 2 free months.
Yep.
So, and if you pay that way, that's 17 cents a day. So that's pretty rocking when you think about that. So the other thing is, by all means, go out to, when you're on Amazon, you're filling out the new Christmas Kindle that you're going to get. Look at our folios that we have 9 or 10 of them, plus the Pocket Herbal and Herbalism for the Zombie Apocalypse that Candace has written. And if you write into her and beg for her, she will write volume 2, which, everyone, I want to leave it. Basically, volume 1 is really good, and it leaves you at a point, and she's got to complete the journey, but she hasn't completed the journey yet.
That's right.
So I think if we all wrote her emails and said, complete the journey, then she might do it for us. But yeah, that'd be a great way to get some herbal information on your Kindle and another way to support us. So, Well, we actually recorded show last week's show 162 6 months ago. We held the second bottle of desert beer that Christina had brought us to see how it would age, and we aged the show 162 so you wouldn't wait 6 months to see how the two bottles compared. So, with that being said, during today's show, we will be uncapping bottle 2 and getting our tastes, or critiquing it, if you will, or go tasting and see how it aged in the bottle. Because, as any home brewer knows, bottle aging, the beer will taste different after a month, after 6 months, after a year. It'll have a different flavor and maturity to it, just like any other fermented product. So I'm looking forward to tasting, because I'll be honest, the first time that we tasted it, it was relatively a young beer, and it wasn't my favorite. It was very light. It was very fruity. It wasn't my beer. It wasn't something that I have to have this. But I could see if I was in Joshua Tree and it was a hot desert day, I think I can drink a lot of that. So I think it just happens to be where you're at. So, all right. Well, with that being said, it's time to start the show. So, without further ado, here are your hosts, Candace Hunter and Sue Sierra Lupe.
I'm Candace Hunter.
And I'm Sue Sierra Lupe.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio. I have to tell you, I'm really excited to uncap Christina's beer today, in part because I am fighting off a cold, and yerba santa is an excellent remedy for respiratory ailments.
That's right. And I'm fighting off a
desire to drink the whole
fighting
bottle.
off a desire to drink it. So that would be good for me to drink it. Yep. So are we going to open it?
Let's get straight to it.
You hurt yourself?
Look, I hurt myself.
Oh my gosh, she's bleeding.
You were waving around the bottle opener and you hurt yourself.
Oh, I hit it on the corner here.
On the corner?
On the corner of the table. The dangerous table.
Jeez,
I'm actually bleeding for y'all. I've made this sacrifice. First blood. Here we go.
So I'm going to open it,
so we can,
and
let's get this bad boy open. Come on.
Do you remember what this called? It was a white sage beer? Is that what they called it?
White sage.
What's that?
Yes. She's all so excited.
There's
the sound.
This one has, if I recall correctly,
it's very bubbly.
Pinyon pine, yerba santa, and white sage in it.
Wow, it is really bubbly.
It should be.
It should be. It has carbonated. It should have carbonated.
We should also tell people that both Patrick and I keep beer bottle openers on our keychains, just in case, just for situations like this. Back home,
we call those a church key, and it's important that every good petitioner has a church key.
Okay.
Right.
All right. We used to call that being an alcoholic, but that's fine too.
Or prepared.
So
I prefer the prepared.
In Minnesota, it's prepared.
Look at all that foam.
I know. Look at it.
Excited.
So before you pour it, let's do it.
Let's do the pour so people can hear it. So people can hear.
Okay. Oh, right. All right. Oh, suck it down.
Oh, goodness. So he just poured fast, which created a really thick head.
A glass of head.
Yeah. It's best not to pour beer fast, but this one's a really
really bubbly.
This is like champagne.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I had some at a party this weekend, and
this
not
is
just beer, but champagne.
I'm sure they didn't use a champagne yeast, but the bubbles are fine and plentiful like a champagne.
Tons of it.
You pour me a little bit.
I want a smaller
amount. Yes. I don't want one that's mostly foam.
Here we go. Say yes. More. Yeah. I can't even see beer there.
I guess it'll just have to be the same amount you poured.
So notice how she poured hers, and she's got a nice column of beer.
Here's
poured. And for the rest of us, she went.
Here, I'm switching with you. I am. Okay. I'm gonna do it. I switched out for the less foam. Oh, it smells lovely though.
Okay. Yep.
The scent reminds me of some kind of flowers from the desert, like a desert flower.
Does it?
Yeah.
It has a sweet.
It's very light.
A very sweet. Did you already? Okay. It hits the back of your throat quick.
That is pretty smooth, I think.
It's light. It's very light. It's a light beer.
It's smooth. It's blended much more blended this time. The
Mhm.
flavors have melded together.
There is a resinous taste. I tasted
Yeah,
resinous
that's
taste, definitely.
That would be the opinion, right? That she had said.
I'm betting, yeah.
And there's sage that I did last time I tasted quickly.
I have
And
to
this
admit,
time I
I like
don't.
it better this time. Possibly that's in part because I am coming down with a cold, and this might be exactly what I need.
Maybe you need beer.
Okay, we got to do a toast.
Oh, we gotta get some more.
Oh yeah, because you can't do toast with, you know.
No, you need a good glass.
Oh.
Okay,
Oh
so
my
Sue is
God.
now busy spilling all over River Road Studios.
No. It's
She's
fine.
awesome. It's good. It's good. It's
Wait,
good.
I have to hold on.
God. So this is
Christina, you have done a wonderful job with this beer. It has aged beautifully. I don't know if you or your fine brewers had saved any bottles to try, but I definitely recommend you break out at least one and give it a try.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, she's back.
Let us toast to Christina and the Desert Brew Triumph.
Yes.
Woohoo!
Joshua Tree
Nice.
Brewing Company, I believe.
Nastrovia.
What's that mean?
To your health.
To your health.
My grandmother always said it after she did toast.
Estrovia.
It's better than it was in May, or when we did the recording. The flavors are more rounded. It has more punch to it as far as complexity.
Yeah.
It's not as sweety. It's not as sweet as it was.
Right.
It's
I remember
that-
it being pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
changed.
Mhm.
And so it's a little bit dry, which I don't mind.
I like that. I like a little dry.
Yeah, it has a nice balanced bittering. I think if they were to sell it, this is the kind of thing they'd want to definitely condition for quite a while before they throw it in out in bottles or on tap.
What's that mean, conditioning your beer?
Well, basically, that's what we did is we held
Let
it
it set.
Let it age, if you will.
And you age it in the bottle.
You
'cause
can,
gotta put
or in a
it-
keg. You can also age it in a
You
keg.
can age it in the keg before you carbonate it, which is fine too. And usually, if you're planning to age it for a long time, you have big batches, you'll probably fill the keg as far as you can and then put a little bit of carbon dioxide on the top or nitrogen on the top so that it doesn't oxidize.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of putting like a chemical shield over the top of it.
Yeah.
So can you you guys brewed a lot of beer. Can you guys kind of walk us through the process a little bit for our listeners? What is it? What does that beer brewing thing look like?
I mean, from start to finish.
Real like an outline.
Take the grains that you're going to use as your base, your malts.
Mm-hmm.
You grind them up and then you basically steep them in water at certain temperatures to convert the sugars.
And when we say grind, we actually mean crack.
Like crack.
You
not-
don't want to
yeah.
grind them like you would.
Yeah,
for
you
no,
want
it's
your
not
powder 'em.
powder.
Yeah, powder.
This is a very brief outline. It's
Yeah.
I just when you said grind, I'm like crack the beer.
Well,
crack
I
the
have
grains.
a grain mill which cracks the grains.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crack the
Because you're
grains.
opening it up so that the bacteria can and the yeast can eat it.
Well, you're opening it up so that the water gets in and then is able to convert those starches that are in the seeds, essentially the grains, the malted grains, to be able to be converted to sugars. And then those sugars are what the yeast is going to eat.
Oh, okay.
But before then, you have to boil it. And all the herbs that she was talking about adding and the things that she was talking with the brewers, that's what they did during the boil. Is there's a period of time that you boil the beer and you add, in most beers, you're adding hops, but you can add other things for your bittering agents, your flavoring agents, and they might get added at different points of the brew cycle.
To be honest, it's a little bit like making a highly specialized decoction.
Oh yeah, beer is a big
You
big decoction.
Yeah.
And why are you putting bitters in? Why is that so important?
Partly it's preservation. That's
Oh.
one of the biggest things is preservation. Like hops and hops resins helps preserve the beer.
Huh.
That's one thing. Beer is a lower alcohol content liquid by just the way it is. So it can have infections that other like wine won't get because wine gets into a higher alcohol content range.
Right.
So that's why you put in that. But above and beyond that, it's also to add flavors to balance the malts.
The sweetness.
Yeah, because if you were to drink a straight beer with no hops in it, it's not very complex and it's not very exciting.
Yeah, it's
Without any
not very
bittering
good.
agent, it's kind of
Just sweet,
Yes.
gooey.
And beers that come at least out of European tradition, quite a few hundred years ago were medicinal in part because that was people needed to just drink good bitter stuff regularly because the water wasn't always great and the food, especially when you get into the cold climates, it can be hard to get your, leafy greens in the middle of
Right, for sure.
minus who knows what degrees.
So you need to get your digestion going somehow.
Yeah. So the beers were helpful for that.
Mm-hmm.
So as a brewer, you decide what your flavor profile is and what you want to have and how long you want to add the bittering agents. In this case, she chose white sage, she chose pinyon pine, she chose Yerba Santa at different points of that boil. And you can even add bittering agents after the boil when you're into your fermentation. But once you
those are usually they're considered more for aroma at that point. So you're looking for the stuff that will have a good scent.
So you get done with that, and then you transfer that liquid, the wort as it is, the wort. Into a primary fermentation vessel. That could be a carboy, that could be whatever you have that you can have an airlock on. You put that in there, you reach it down to room temperature, and then you pitch your yeast. And just like everything else, there's not just one yeast. You pick the flavor profile you're looking for. If you want a London ale, there's a London ale yeast. If you want a Irish stout, there's an Irish stout yeast, a German lager. I mean, there's just lots of different ways that you can go about fermenting this beer now with yeast, which will impart its own flavors into it. So you've got all of the grains that gave that flavor, and then you have all the bittering agents to give flavor. And now we've added the yeast, which its byproduct will give it a flavor. So that all comes together to make that beer. Wow. And the first fermentation, or primary fermentation, is about 2 weeks. With 1 week where it goes in and the yeast goes crazy, literally if you're doing an ale, it goes crazy for 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 days, depending on the yeast. And then it starts to slow down and settle out because it's eating all the sugar. And once it settles out, then you rack it into another one to clear it out. And then you go another 7 days there. And after that, you can bottle it or keg it typically. But after that, the rules of how people handle their beer changes. You can sit it on secondary longer. You can put it in a keg for a year. You can put it in an oak cask, an old bourbon barrel. People have been doing that now to impart that oak flavor to the beer. I mean, there's just so many more things you can do creatively now at that point. So everything along the path gives you the beer, the complexity to the beer, the flavors that you're looking for. That's why when you go to the grocery store now, you see a wall of beer, and it's all going to taste different.
Right. Some beers are meant to be more aged, like stouts, porters, IPAs. Those originally were developed to be beers that would sit for 6-9 months.
Well, yeah, especially with the IPAs, because they were designed to be, on a ship for months to go from England to India.
Yeah.
Oh,
so that
that's Indian Pale Ale.
Right. It was designed to go to help the people living in India get through their beerless days.
Yes,
exactly.
A pale ale is not necessarily a very hoppy beer. An India Pale Ale is a very hoppy beer because the hops preserved the ale until it got to the other side over.
Oh.
In part because it wasn't necessarily a very high alcohol content. The higher your alcohol content, the more expensive it is to make the beer because you need a lot of malt. Low alcohol content beers are cheaper to make because you don't need nearly as much malt or barley in the first place. So India Pale Ale is a pale ale, which is typically not necessarily a very high alcohol content traditionally, but with a ton of hops to preserve it so that it didn't go bad, because it could actually taste awful.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that could taste pretty foul.
Do you have to control the temperature?
In which point? Yeah, well, you don't want to bake your beer. I mean, with lagering, it's at a cooler temperature. It's down in the 40-degree range in that area. It's it always is cold all the way through the fermentation. With ales, it's the more room temperature, 68 degrees, give or take.
Unless you're looking at like Trappist ales, which tend to be cooler.
Oh, yeah.
It
kind of depends. That's a very specialized thing.
Yeah, so. It depends on which beer you're making.
So is that why you'd have some seasonal stuff, not only what is being harvested at the time, but also what your temperature is while it's sitting there?
Yes. Yeah.
And to some extent, and what's available. And then historically, different beers were offered at different times. I mean, you don't necessarily drink a heavy stout in the middle of summer.
No, because typically you've begun your heavy stout and it's still fermenting and sitting in the summer. And by the time fall rolls around, then it's time to break it out. In the meantime, you've been drinking lighter ales made with lower alcohol content and fewer grains, and they're usually lighter, and you know, the blonde ales and the light,
they're
the light
fruitier.
stuff,
I mean,
fruitier,
the
and
thing is
more
that
refreshing.
what Candace was saying is that beer was not just a refreshment; it was food.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, so you didn't need a heavy beer in the summer, but a heavy beer in the winter would be better.
Right.
You know, there's more nutrition into it. I mean, people make the joke that like when you drink an oatmeal stout, it's like drinking a loaf of bread.
Right. Well, we used to say
there's
there's a sandwich in
there.
every bottle.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
kind of is. So
Kind of is, yeah.
but yeah, so that's in a nutshell. That's kind of beer making. So what Christina did was to work with the brewers there and say, hey, these herbs do these things, and this is what I feel will help you get that flavor profile you're looking for. And I think this is like beer 2 or 3 that they tried, because
this is the second one, I believe.
when you're messing with these types of herbs, you're going to be looking at some interesting first runs to find that recipe that's going to work. And you know, it's a big commitment. I mean, you know, to go from 0 to drinking a bottle of beers a month. You know, and not that, but the investment in grain and yeast and everything else. I mean, it's not,
and trying to source some of these hard to get items too.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Christina posting about not harvesting wild sage, and that's white sage and that sort of thing. I mean, it's not an easy plant. It's not like it grows, you know, like dandelions in our Midwestern lawns.
Right. You can grow it in a garden, but
you have to plan.
You got to plan ahead. And I think that from my end, I know as a former herb buyer what it was like to get some of these plants as they transitioned from wild crafted to cultivated, because they were not as popular before, so we could get it wild crafted responsibly, and then people started really wanting to have the plants more regularly, so it was irresponsible to get it. So we had to get it cultivated, and some of them don't cultivate very well.
Right. Yeah. Some of them are extremely challenging.
Yep.
I mean, that was part of what we had problems with like the golden seal.
Golden seal,
for a
black
long
coash.
time. Yeah. I mean, happily
OSHA.
we have some of those now that dedicated herbal farmers have figured out how to grow and how to carefully cultivate and actually are doing quite well. But I think that might be part of what happened with white sage, is that it wasn't as popular, and then it became more and more so, and now it's completely over harvested. And you know, I'm glad she's standing up for it, and she's, you know, calling it out and trying to educate folks.
And one of the ways of helping make that transition is when you see a product that it is using the cultivated item that's a little difficult, like the white sage or cultivated black coash, then making sure that you're helping that business.
Yeah. Yeah, it might cost a little bit more than the wild crafted version, but it's worth it to pay that small amount more, because ultimately it will, in the long run, become less expensive.
Yep, definitely.
And definitely less expensive for our environment.
Yeah. I know a lot of, at least when I was young, I had this notion that, well, it's, if I get this plant and it's endangered or it's in a trouble situation, then well, it's just me getting it, but it's never just me. Right.
You represent many, many others who will come over and just me. And next thing you know, 10%, 10%, 10%, and there's like hardly any plants left.
Yep. And it happens very quickly. And that's what we see in real life. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'm impressed with the work that Christina has been doing. I saw her recently. She posted her pinyon pine syrup on Instagram with the recipe and everything. I got to say, I wish I was her neighbor right now, because I would love to be trying that out. She's just, I mean, she's wonderful. The things she's doing with the trying different recipes and different medicine making techniques. She's going to be teaching a desert fire cider workshop in, I think it's November 18th. I think it's that weekend. You can find it, I'm sure, through her Facebook page.
Right. I'll make sure we put it in the show notes too.
Great. But yeah, she's going to be teaching that. And I love the idea of fire cider, but made with desert herbs. I mean, how perfect is that? You know?
We should also say that Christina has been regularly posting videos. So if you want to follow her videos as she walks through desert. So, you know, you may not be able to get go to the places where she's at, but you get a little view of it from an experienced person's eyes, experienced herbalist eyes.
Yeah. Experience and ethical, highly ethical herbalist eyes. Yeah. I think she's doing another workshop. I think that's an elderberry syrup workshop.
Oh, really? Okay.
Same time. I think they're both November 18th. So I would definitely, if you're in her area, check it out. Find out what she's doing and get over there and give her your support and get some good herbal learning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're lucky, maybe she'll share some of that pinyon pine syrup with you.
Maybe.
And if you're an Herbal Nerd Society member, you should just give me a shout and let me know. And we'll tell everyone how good it was.
And you guys can look forward to an article that she wrote. It's on a hair grow goo that she fashioned. And that article will be either have come out by the time this podcast is posted or will be coming out soon.
Very soon.
One of the two. And then look for her other interviews that we've had with her and podcasts in the past. I'll try to put some of those in the show notes as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So.
Well, now it's time for a word from our sponsor. Hey, we're back. Today we're going to talk I wouldn't say it's a Herbal 101, is it? As much as it's a comment from a listener, an Herbal Nerd Society member.
Participation in the conversation that we had in podcast
161.
161, yes.
Where we talked about
we were talking about licensure in response to Thomas Easley's functional herbalism, his concern about, how we have a lot of irresponsible herbalists out there and there's got to be some kind of format to work with.
Okay.
So he's offering one option.
All right. Well, this is from Kyle. I'll read the letter. It's 3-4 paragraphs. He says, "Hello, Herbal Nerd Society member here. Following this week's podcast, I wanted to take a minute to share some thoughts about licensure. I'm a licensed massage therapist, which makes me a healthcare provider in the state of Washington. I am all for licensures. It does not make a therapist, a doctor, or dentist, or whoever a good practitioner, but it does give the public recourse when a practitioner does something objectively wrong. As herbalists, you are accepting payment for what we really are, healthcare services. Call it what you will. Clients are usually coming to you, sit and complain, and you're usually offering some kind of remedy. If an herbalist gives a client a dangerous remedy, the client should have recourse other than a civil suit. The flip side of this coin is that as a healthcare provider, I get to have insurance. Insurance is a wonderful, wonderful thing that protects me if I, acting in good faith, accidentally hurt someone. I have never had this happen, but I sure value this protection. Licensure has also not limited my scope beyond what I should not be doing anyway. I can use dozens of modalities. In fact, my continuing education choices are so broad, and I flip the page, I cannot possibly excel at all of them. There are niches for everyone. Licensure only establishes a very basic level of competency. It does not limit what you can then go on to do with further training. In addition, in massage, there are widely varying viewpoints and approaches to any given condition or discomfort. One group of therapists focus on myofascial release, others focus on neuromuscular therapy, some focus on craniosacral work. Most of us blend a number of approaches into our own unique approach, and that works just fine. No one in the government is dictating our approach. The Board of Massage just sets basic rules that therapists should find quite easy to follow. I think it is a mistake for herbalists to fear the concept of licensure or oversight. You may find that you have far more opportunities to help people if the practice is generally more accepted. And licensure does not affect the layperson's ability to use herbs any more than it affects the layperson's ability to give another person a foot massage or a back rub or to use a foam roller for self-care. These are just my 2 cents. Warm regards, Kyle Putnam. So guys, what do you think?
Well, I really appreciate Kyle writing in there. He's one of our Herbal Nerd Society members.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. I actually truly appreciate a value his opinion.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's good to hear it from someone who is doing massage therapy as well, and to kind of see, because that's getting them licensed is a fairly new. Yeah.
It's big. That was a big thing.
It was.
And that's handled state by state. So the licensing requirements in each state are different.
Yep. Which is pretty common also for doctors as well. Like Oregon has their own licensure rules, and you can't come from another state and come into Oregon as a doctor.
Right.
You have to go through your own thing, and in America, you can't come in if you were a doctor in Peru or something. They make you start over again.
Yeah.
And I don't know about that. I think might be too extreme. I think you should be able to retest and recertify and do your thing, especially if you have the training.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting that it is state to state, and it's not just in the medical industries. I mean, even accounting.
Yeah,
you have to recertify to be an accountant in different states.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that interesting too.
Insurance too. You have to be licensed in each state that you
want to sell
serve.
Insurance.
Yeah. So that
and real estate.
So that means we have like a bioregional accounting and a bioregional insurance. That's an interesting concept too.
We have a lot of regionalism in a lot of professions. Yeah. Yes, and the way a profession is practiced here in Oregon might be different from the way it's practiced in Washington or in Florida or, in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some states will just accept the other state's certification and you just apply for it and you're good to go. In other states like Oregon, you have to certify in the state with its testing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on the local laws that you're there with. It's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah. I know in Oregon, I believe the licensed massage therapists have to do regular continuing education, and they have to recertify or retest or repay license fees regularly. I believe it's annually, but I'm not sure.
Because you have to do a certain amount of education, continuing education.
Right.
But I think he brings up a really valid point about the insurance side of it, and not just the insurance side for the patient, but the insurance side for the provider.
Yeah, that's the part that to me seems it can be a good thing, but it also can be scary, because when you start looking at, if I'm going to go to a licensed massage therapist, it's not cheap, partly because they have to cover their costs, which includes paying their insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost starts to go up.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing can happen with herbal practice. And I've spoken to, in our area, there are quite a few licensed massage therapists, which means that there's too many licensed massage therapists for the number of people who will see them. So they have to keep their costs down, which means they have to do a lot more massages each week, which is hard on their bodies.
Right. Yeah,
hard
that's
on their hands. And it keeps them at a very low income.
Mm-hmm.
And so all those costs, all those things come together to be potentially really challenging to be able to actually be a professional in that field.
It's tough in business in general.
Yeah. And I mean, that can happen in any place. And someone who's a licensed massage therapist here in the, Eugene, Springfield area might very well go, out to Eastern Oregon to a really tiny town and be the only one and be able to charge a rate that will actually be sustainable for them.
And that's a big problem out here, because we've got massage school. So we've got all these graduates that they want to stay here.
Yeah.
And then you kind of flooded the market here a bit.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of herbalists in this area.
Yeah.
Because we can grow everything. So we have an herbal industry out here. But you've got people that they are getting very little money for, that's the market. That's
it's the market. It's the market. But if we now add if we add more costs to the cost of doing business for those herbalists who are already barely scraping by because the market won't pay more because there's too many herbalists, and but on the other hand, if you can accept insurance as an herbalist, you can potentially work with other related practitioners like acupuncturists, licensed massage therapist, maybe a reflexologist or a Reiki practitioner or something like that. You can get like a wellness center together.
Yep.
And if you all can accept the same insurances, you can kind of pass clients back and forth with each other.
That's true.
And the insurance company pays, which means that it opens it up to a lot of people who might not otherwise have tried herbs.
And that's a real problem, I think, in the herbal industry right now, is that people, for very few exceptions, that are going to herbalists, they have a high income.
Yeah.
The people that a lot of herbalists that are herbalists, many of us are herbalists because we couldn't afford to go see an herbalist ourselves. So we became an herbalist.
We learned what we needed to learn, and then we just kept learning.
Yeah. So for low income people, sure, they could go out and wildcraft their own and make stuff. And we have stuff available on our website so people can do stuff like that and do it intelligently. But a lot of folks that are low income, it's a lot of work. And if you're working a couple of different jobs and raising kids and
I mean, let's be really honest here. When we say low income, we're actually talking about both low and middle income. Because what we currently in our country call middle income is not a lot of money to get by on.
Right. The middle class is becoming kind of a myth these days. But if we have insurance, then, I mean, that's one of the things that we're seeing now is there are people that are insurance and they have insurance and they're very low income and they can go see a practitioner. Yeah. So, and that wasn't accessible before. So,
right. And on one hand, I think that it's a really good thing. And I know quite a few people here whose incomes are on par with my own, which is not very high. And I say that I'm going to go see the massage therapist because I've got to fix my back. And they're like, oh my God, your insurance pays for that? And I'm like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I pay for that out of my pocket because it actually works.
Yep.
My insurance company doesn't understand what works and won't give me what I need. So I have to pay it out of pocket. And I'm still willing to do that because I understand that that's going to help me.
Yep.
And I'm not willing to pay very high insurance premiums. I would personally, a lot of times, feel I'd rather go without insurance because what's the point of paying $500 or $600 a month or more for something that I can't use because they won't let me?
Yeah.
Because what they want me to use is the stuff that doesn't actually work for my body.
Right.
It may work for other people, but it doesn't work for me. And what that has ended up doing is I'm watching people who could afford to go to a licensed massage therapist balk at the idea of paying more than $20. So what does that do for the licensed massage therapists or the acupuncturists or the naturopaths?
Yeah.
I mean, it ends up putting them into a position where they become less accessible because insurance has gotten in the way.
Right.
And
so
it's
herbs for the people are just for the wealthy people, the people that can somehow afford to go. Like in Oregon and in Hawaii, you can see a naturopath and insurance will pay for it.
If you have the right insurance. Yes.
If you have the right insurance, right, of course. But in Idaho, no.
Right.
If you want to see a naturopath, you just better save your pennies.
You just do it on your own, which is, I mean.
And that's not right.
Well, I don't think the insurance industry is not right because the insurance industry is dictating care. It's not allowing the practitioner and the patient to dictate care.
Yeah, don't get me started on that pre-qualified stuff because I think that is an insurance scam. However, this is insurance and insurance is its own issue. And, we're healthcare for all. That's what we need.
But I mean, on the other hand, I do like the idea of potentially being able to get insurance for my practice that will protect me against a malpractice suit. Although I've spoken to quite a few herbalists who have been in the field 20, 30, even 40 years, and none of them have ever been sued.
Yeah. And is that luck or, because all you need is one person that's got their ire up and they're just looking for someone to hit.
Yeah, well, and when you start moving into the place where you've got licensure and all of those things and the costs get higher, then that's when lawsuits are more likely to happen too.
Yep. I know somebody that had to move out of state because they got hit by somebody that was just hit with a lawsuit and they were just looking for someone to, like, oh, you look vulnerable. Boom.
Yeah.
And it's spooky.
I mean, a lot of us as herbalists, honestly, you sue them and you're like, well, you can't get blood out of a turnip. Right, so what's the point? All you're going to do is drive them out of business.
Here's my 72 Honda.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you're getting. $300, a couple of bananas.
Yeah, bananas on the side.
But I really appreciate Kyle's perspective, and he is right. There can be, I think, a good place for licensure in the long run.
We should have the options.
Yeah, and I really have the options. Yeah, and I still think that having the structure of proper schools where you can get good credentials makes sense,
and be able to trust them. Because I know many years ago I was looking for an herb school, and I looked and looked and looked, and I found one that I thought, oh, this is going to be the greatest. And then doing a little more research, I'm like, oh, this doesn't mean anything. This is not that the certificate meant anything. Right. I realized that early on.
Right.
But the classes were vapid.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of think that, Kyle's working in a field where they have the schools.
Yeah.
They are further along
Right.
in their growth.
They're
We're like the
certified
little
licensed.
toddler brothers and sisters compared to the licensed massage therapists who are at least like middle school, high school. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I understand massage therapy school, at least here, and the one in Eugene is, it's pretty
Intense.
hardcore.
Yeah.
It's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, most of the massage therapists I've spoken to, whether they trained initially here or elsewhere in other states, most of them talk about the programs are not easy.
Mhm.
They're not fluffy. They're not, oh, look, I saw this video on YouTube and now I've got a book that I've written and I'm going to give you a certificate.
Right.
They're-
It means something.
Yeah.
These people have
it's-
really studied and they've focused.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. And, you know, I know in the end it becomes up to us to be part of that change.
Yes.
So we got to do our scholarship and make sure that we're making wise choices and supporting things that will help other people, and just be aware there will always be a risk. There's always a risk.
There is always a risk.
So got to play your cards right. But thank you, Kyle, for your response and for being part of the
Yay for the Herbal Nerd Society.
Herbal Nerd Society. And,
Yay.
and I hope that you enjoyed our podcast, because we sure enjoyed reading what you were thinking about.
And as always, put
Put
an
an
herb on
on
it. The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.